New faces with explosive performances caught our eye in week 3. Some guys are rising up, getting more usage and producing in those spots, while household names are going down with injury. Not here to waste your time, folks. Let's jump into these must-adds ahead of week 4 to get you back on track. We begin with Sam Laporta. He is owned in 63% of leagues, and typically I do stick to players at or below that 50% mark, but the value here is irrefutable. In a tight end market where anything over 7 to 8 points per game, even in a standard PPR format, indicates that you've got some borderline premier talent at the position. I love Laporta here. TJ Hawkinson saw north of 80 targets in 2 of his first 3 seasons with Detroit. Obviously, he left. So I was really curious on how the early second rounder out of Tight End University in Iowa would perform. He saw 11 targets in his first 2 contests and hauled in 10 of them, capitalizing on nearly every opportunity. He gave us a double-digit fantasy performance in a standard PPR format against Seattle in week 2, and then exploded for us in week 3. In the Sunday morning live stream, I did project that he'd get more usage, considering that both Amon-Ra St. Brown and Josh Reynolds were questionable until game day against an already pretty stingy secondary in Atlanta. Well, if that made Laporta the top healthy option, pressure makes diamonds with the 11 targets he saw this week alone. If he can do as much as keep up a pace of 5 to 6 targets per game, which seems pretty sustainable considering he's averaging over 7 through 3 contests so far, I like the odds. Not to mention, Detroit's got a short turnaround. They play Green Bay on Thursday. We'll see how bruised up Josh Reynolds and Amon-Ra St. Brown are. Tank Dell is owned in 22.5% of leagues and rising right now. There's a term out there called chasing points in the fantasy world. If you're not familiar with it, it's where you see somebody pop off and get a big fantasy total and then mindlessly add the person. Now, I don't hate doing that if you have a surplus of talent at that position and you want to utilize them for trade value. I am very against doing it to where all of a sudden you consider playing the person the following week. That's a huge risk. Tank Dell and all of these picks really are not chasing points pickups by any means. They are justified. Dell's usage has been on a healthy incline, and we saw him impressing across the board this preseason. Now, preseason in its own right can be misleading, like the Marquez Callaway storyline from last year, but Tank Dell is capitalizing on every opportunity. We talk about optimizing with those targets. 17 of his 21 targets have come in the last 2 games, and he's now gone back-to-back contests with a touchdown. And I wouldn't say he's touchdown reliant either, considering that, hypothetically, if you pull the 2 scores from Dell's slate, he still has 14 and 20 points in each of the last 2 weeks in a standard PPR format. The man is averaging almost 17 yards per reception, yet he's got a 71% catch percentage. What do we have to watch for when you get into down the field targets that see a higher influx of breakout plays is to see, are these 50-50 risk it balls? Is this a Gabe Davis scenario where the catch percentage hovers around 50% and his variability from a fantasy perspective is through the roof? Through 3 games, this is not the case with Tank Dell. We are getting the best of both worlds. Down the field targets, high catch percentage. Dell has big play potential, but he's right up there as one of CJ Stroud's favorite targets so far. I love this pick. Speaking of CJ Stroud, holy cow. We saw him throw for volume against the Colts in a game that was virtually out of hand for its entirety in week 2. But that was impressive in its own right, considering there's an Ohio State stigma surrounding quarterbacks, and he easily cleared 300 yards. Well, this week, it didn't have to be a throw-heavy scheme. Houston only ran 56 plays, with just over half of them being in the passing category, as Stroud went 20 for 30 with a pair of touchdown passes. Something that I don't think is being appreciated enough is the fact that CJ Stroud completed multiple passes to 6 different receivers. Now, it makes questions like, who do I start, Nico Collins or Tank Dell? A little complicated until we have a larger sample size to work off of, but if 1 or 2 receivers goes down with an injury, Stroud is showing right here, right now, that he can lean on a variety of weapons in this Houston offense and still thrive for us. He's even getting Dameon Pierce involved in the passing offense after Pierce was a negligible part of that in his rookie year last year. Stroud has over 900 yards passing, 4 touchdowns through the air, and 0 turnovers. I'm high on Stroud in what may be a relatively wide open AFC South, considering that Houston just dethroned the team that took the title last year in Jacksonville rather easily. He's got some tough matchups coming up against Pittsburgh and Atlanta ahead of the team's bye week, so I would consider Stroud as a stash option. But hey, those of you who have Joe Burrow or Anthony Richardson going through an injury right now, this guy CJ Stroud looks pretty promising so far. Devon Achane is next. Holy moly. I mean, we talked about him as someone who was flying up our rankings a couple of weeks ago, but nobody knew a 50-plus point performance was in the cards. If you say you did, you're lying. Achane is the reason, and I have been getting ripped for this, that I am selling high on Raheem Mostert, especially after this week. Let's look at the facts. Raheem Mostert is a 31-year-old running back who has played just 2 full seasons in 8 tries heading into this year. Jeff Wilson Jr. is on his way back from the IR, but of course an injury history is in his past as well. Meanwhile, who fits the mold just as good as anybody? How about a guy who is top 10 all-time at Texas A&M in the 60-meter, 100-meter, and 200-meter dash, a track standout? This Miami team is known for going after players with insane breakout speed. Do Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and even Raheem Mostert himself sound familiar? A-Chain finally got his touches this week, and yeah, we saw the rest. In for just 41% of snaps in a blowout that saw 70 points from the Dolphins, A-Chain finished as the running back one. Now, I'm not going to contradict my point with the sell high Raheem Mostert campaign. This will be a crowded backfield. I'm just going to say don't be shocked at all if Devon A-Chain is at the head of this running back committee by the end of the year. I was not the biggest fan of Ezekiel Elliott last year in Dallas. Despite the differing skill set and play styles between him and Tony Pollard, Pollard was the much more efficient back, and I was in the camp that he should have blown Elliott out of the water in touches, but that's a different debate. This is a new year. Ramondre Stevenson could look a lot better on the ground from an efficiency standpoint, and Zeke is starting to get more usage as we near week 4. His 17 touches against the Jets beat out the 15 he saw over the course of the first 2 weeks combined, and Zeke looked efficient. He's now averaging 4.4 yards per carry, and in a tough battle against the Jets, he nearly split carries with Ramondre Stevenson. We're still yet to see him find the end zone, but we need to keep in mind that Elliott is a similar build to Stevenson. They're both hovering around the same weight, but with Stevenson averaging under 3 yards per carry through 3 weeks, it'll be interesting to see if Belichick starts leaning towards the better back so far in Zeke. Jake Ferguson is our next option, and he's quietly becoming one of the better options at the tight end spot in the league, considering this guy leads the entire NFL in red zone targets. Ferguson is owned in 20% of leagues right now. I don't know about all of you, but I will gladly take somebody who's leading the entire NFL in red zone targets if I know they're likely a free pickup off the waiver wire. Now the guy has had 7 targets in 2 of the last 3 games and greater than 9.5 points in each of the last 2 weeks. While he only racked in 5 of his first 11 targets, he went 5 for 7 and seemingly got on the same page as Dak Prescott against the Cardinals in what ended up being a pass-heavy scheme because the Cowboys were working from behind, and Dak threw the ball 40 times. Ferguson is 8th in the league among tight ends in targets and is on a team in Dallas that gave Dalton Schultz 5.9 of them per game. That's the 7th highest mark in the league. He was in the ballpark of guys like Pat Freiermuth and Tyler Higbee from a usage perspective. Not bad company to be in. Seemingly so far, Ferguson is the 2nd favorite target on this year's Dallas team. The fact that somebody this valuable is probably free in your league right now is phenomenal news. Please go take advantage of it. Even if you have a surplus of talent at the tight end position and you're rolling with somebody like Taylor Swift's boyfriend, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson, or somebody else, you all know what we say about talent with lots of upside. You can always use them as trade capital. Jerick McKinnon is starting to regain the reputation he learned in the latter half of last year. In the first year without Tyreek Hill in the receiving core, McKinnon was 2nd on the team behind Kelce with 9 receiving touchdowns. He's owned in just 51.5% of leagues, but that mark started trending downwards after an underwhelming first 2 weeks of this season. The pair of touchdowns against Chicago helps his case, but some more receiving volume is what we're going to need to see, considering that he averaged greater than 4 targets per contest last year when he became a feasible fantasy option. McKinnon sits firmly as the RB2 on this Chiefs depth chart, with Isaiah Pacheco gravitating around 50% of snaps, Edwards-Helaire well below that, and McKinnon sitting right in the middle. This is definitely a deeper league move if you're going to even consider starting McKinnon going into next week, since I would consider him as touchdown reliant, which is dangerous yet exciting. Relating back to last year, in 10-ish team leagues, I'd sit back and watch for now and just stash him. For 12-team leagues, super flex leagues, and everything beyond that range, let's pull the trigger and add him now and maybe even consider plugging him in going into week 4, especially when you consider the amount of running backs going down in the last couple of weeks. The Chiefs could still win a lot of games. They look pretty promising so far, and that would also lead to a run-heavy scheme. Luke Musgrave is our final pick here. He's kind of in uncharted waters when you look at the game environment in Green Bay, but Musgrave is trending in the right direction and is only owned in 13% of leagues. It's a new quarterback in Jordan Love. Musgrave is a rookie himself, and the Packers have been missing a pair of key pieces in Aaron Jones and Christian Watson over the course of the last pair of weeks. However, after seeing just 7 targets rolling into this week's matchup, he saw 8 in week 3 alone and hauled in a team best 6 receptions in the Packers come from behind win against the Saints. He currently sits behind Romeo Doubs and Jaden Reed, who are tied for the team lead in targets with 20 of them. So again, there's a lot of volume competition. Some guys are going to be coming back pretty soon ahead of Thursday's matchup against the Lions. And I do see the Packers reverting more to the run when they get someone who has been a 1,000-yard rusher in 3 of the last 4 seasons in Aaron Jones back. Not to mention, Jones has demanded at least 60 targets in each of the last 4 years as well. But hey, Musgrave got his number called last week. He passed the eye test. We'll see what happens going forward. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I greatly appreciate the support. Ask any questions that you may have ahead of week 4 in the comment section below. Make sure you like and subscribe if we're helping you with your fantasy football situation, and we will see you in the next video.